Welcome to Conversations with the Commish. Today we're pleased to have with us the Executive Director of NACDA, Bob Vecchione. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Welcome, John. Glad to be here.
Here's the easiest question of the day. What is NACDA?
NACDA is the Professional Association for Athletics Administrators, obviously nationwide. We use the slogan because the question's asked all the time, so we answer it by saying, the NCAA legislates, NACDA educates. And that kind of summarizes it. I mean, after 27 years, you kind of have to say the right thing, and it kind of resonates with people when you say that. So we're in the education business, and we've been doing it for 56 years, and one of these days I think we'll get it right, but we're still trying.
And it's well beyond athletic directors.
Yes. We have, under our umbrella, we call it, 17 different individual associations and 3 foundations. Each association is autonomous. They have their own bylaws, their own checking account, their own investment account. They're run independently from one another. We have staff people who manage 3 to 5 to 6 of these associations. And then we have an intern that also participates in the association management to give them some experience that they'll need for the next step in their career.
So you've got all of these organizations under your house, so to speak. What do you spend your time doing?
Well, it gets a little crazy at times. We are really in the meeting planning business. I mean, there's not anyone on our staff who could come in today and probably be an athletics director. But we're event people, we're meeting planners, and all of our people on staff just love the heck out of what they do, and they're really good at it.
What's your interest in sports? Why did you end up in the sports world?
Well, I was blessed enough to be a former student athlete. I played baseball at a NAIA school way back when called Missouri Western, which is now a Division II institution. And I just grew up loving sports and then having the opportunity to work in this business, if you want to call it work, because it's hard to say, you say you really haven't worked a day in your life, but feel very blessed to follow my passion as a student athlete, working in corporate America for 11 years and then getting back on a campus and really fulfilling my dream.
And you were in media relations, I believe, at Minnesota?
Right. Yeah, when they interviewed me, it was rather funny because there were the men's SID, the women's SID, and the senior associate at Minnesota, and I was in corporate America. I was a sales guy. I was a director of sales at National Car Rental, focusing in on the intercollegiate market. And the question was, well, Bob, we're going to hire you for media relations. What do you know about media relations? And I anticipated the question, and I said, Dan, I'll be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about media relations. And I swear to God, the men's SID dropped his fork at breakfast on the plate. And I let it wait, and then I said, Dan, but you know, I built my whole life. I had great mentors who taught me a lot about customer service, about dealing with people, and I believe I can teach our young men who work in sports information, because back then it was a men's department and women's department. I can teach our young men how to service not only the media, but the coaches and the student athletes, and I'd like the opportunity to do that, and they hired me. Got lucky.
And so you spent, I believe, a couple years there, and then you were the executive director of the Final Four when it was in Minneapolis. Was that 91?
At 92.
92.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a dual role job. I ran the sports information department and really just managed the people, because we had, Mark Dienhart was the associate AD, and that was really his background. So he kind of did all the heavy lifting there. But the Twin Cities Organizing Committee is what I really managed. We had a first and second round in 91, and then a Final Four in 92. And it was really a proving ground for the men's athletics department. We had a new AD, Rick Bay came in, and we really had to show the city that, you know, we meant business and we can do it right. They had some issues when they hosted a regional in '89, so we worked real hard. Our staff there was phenomenal, and we managed a first and second round in '91 very well, and the Final Four in '92 was just a coup de grace. It was just a phenomenal experience, one that I'll never forget, and our staff really pulled together and hit a grand slam.
Think back to your time there at Minnesota about a situation you dealt with that really stretched you, that probably was really stressful at the time, but then when you got through it, you said, wow, we learned a little bit here.
It was the tough part. That's a great question, but the tough part for me was my first 11 years in corporate America was with a private company. And so when I went to the university, Mark Dienhart pulled me aside and said, now look, we're a public institution, and it's a little different here. Anybody could walk into your office and sit down and ask you to look in your files or do anything of that sort. You work for the people. We're a public institution, and it was just a mentality that was a little different at first. It kind of like cold water in the face. I said, holy cow, I never thought of all these things, being in media, being at the institution, being in the athletics department. But it really opened up my eyes and really expanded my horizon from all elements of life, whether it's, you know, diversity and being honest and being open with people. And that was probably the biggest thing, just kind of broadening my horizon, which and the things I learned back at University of Minnesota, you just learn every day. I use every day of my life. It was just a phenomenal experience, and you know, when you're challenged and when you're in a new, you know, I was like a fish out of water. That was a whole new thing for me, but it was very gratifying, and it allowed me to do my job better today because I sat in that chair on campus for 2 years.
The staffer who dropped his fork when you were interviewed, was he still employed at the time you left?
Oh yeah, Bob Peterson was a champion. He was a longtime sports information director there, and he was very, very beneficial. It was tough for him because he was an older gentleman, and I came in above him. But he was again just salt of the earth and just a tremendous, tremendous human being.
What then brought you to NACDA?
Well, in the mid-'80s, when I was looking to expand my horizons in the college marketplace, I was asking around as to who I should meet with to get a better idea of the world of college athletics, and all queries pointed to Mike Cleary. I didn't know Mike from Adam, so I called him, and as was his way of doing things, he called right back, and we met for breakfast at the Red Lion Hotel at SeaTac Airport, 1984, and we just hit it off. I was a young guy. We just hit it off and told him what I wanted to do, and he convinced me to spend some money with the organization, so I became a sponsor of NACDA, and that led to the first sponsorship opportunity at my first Final Four in 1985. Villanova won the Final Four in Lexington, and we sponsored a function for NACDA there. And we just became friends, we hit it off, and that was really my entree into the real behind-the-scenes world of college athletics. That's where I got to know everyone.
You know, you raised the name of Mike Cleary, who really developed NACDA.
Oh yeah.
With a lot of help, but for probably any athletics administrator who's 35 years of age or older, you've probably crossed paths with Mike Cleary somewhere along the line. What did you learn from Mike in working for him for so long?
He was the best. He was honest, forthright, and probably the biggest thing was I always thought I was pretty good at reading people, but he took it to a new level. He whether it be in meetings, he would sit people in certain places. He just knew. The biggest thing with Mike was that he taught me was you got to have the votes on the initiative before you get in the meeting, and that's been vital. And the whole, Kevin White, the athletics director at Duke, once said, and Mike always said this too, but it's all about politics. And they said, yeah, a young person comes in a room and says, well, Mike, or well, Kevin or Bob, I want to get in college athletics, but I really don't like politics. And well, if you don't like politics, then you shouldn't get in this business, because it's dealing with people, but you also have to deal with all of the idiosyncrasies that are around the industry. And so learning the politics, learning to know people even better, and really working behind the scenes. Mike was a phenomenal guy. He didn't have to have his name in the lights. He always wanted to defer to somebody else, and that's really the path of NACDA. That's what we do. They don't want to hear from Bob Vecchione. They want to hear from Greg Byrne. They want to hear last year's president, Bubba Cunningham. They want to hear next year's president, Jeannie Pinsetto. So we're not really in the forefront of things. We prefer to have our members, our leadership in the forefront, and that's really paid dividends for the organization.
How did NACDA end up in essentially the suburb of Cleveland, just down the road from where we are today?
Well, Mike was working with the NCAA. He was one of the first. I think there were 5 employees there, and every day Walter Byers went to lunch. Well, it was over lunchtime. The phone rang. Mike picked it up, and it was Jim Corbett, who was the athletics director at LSU. And Jim said, "Well, Mike, I need to talk to Walter, because we're going to start this association for ADs, and we need a guy to run it." And Mike, being Mike, said, "Well, you don't really need to talk to Walter, because I'm interested, and I think you and I could have this conversation and figure something out." And it just grew from there. He negotiated office space in Minneapolis for 3 years. But after 3 years, the organization was starting to get on its feet a little bit, and he figured, okay, it's my wife, Sue, and I. I've got 9 kids. I'm living in Minneapolis. I want to get back home where I've got help to raise these 9 kids. And I want to know who my kids are dating, who their parents are, and send them to St. Ignatius and Catholic schools and all that. And so he decided to move it home, and that's how it is. I mean, we've been here for over 50 years, west side of Cleveland.
You've been in charge of NACDA for, 8, 9 years?
8 years.
What do you view as your primary accomplishments in that period of time?
Far and away, the first thing would be to keep the legacy that Mike created, number one. The second thing would be that when I was hired, the leadership of NACDA wanted the association to grow through association management. So they said, "Bob," I said, what does that mean? What are you telling me? He said, "We want you to start an association for each business unit that reports into the director of athletics." Because when I started in July 1, 1992, there wasn't any. It was just NACDA and the NACDA Foundation. So we began the journey, and started with NACMA was the first one, the Marketing Association, and then Pat Manick was hired, and basically Pat and I have been on the road together to build all of these associations, and that's really been NACDA's primary reason for growth, because we now have almost 16,000 people under the umbrella if you look at everybody. The umbrella provides $1.2 million a year back to their constituents, back to their individual silos of membership in the form of sponsorships or to attend various meetings. So it's a give back society, all kind of stemming from the NACDA philosophy.
NACDA has been vocal, and NACDA has been a leader in championing the issue of diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the activities that NACDA leads in that area?
Well, that's a great question. Mike really started the McClendon Foundation. Mike and John McClendon were best friends. Mike really hired the first African-American coach in professional sports when he hired John McClendon right here for the Cleveland Pipers. So Mike and John were, he was a GM, John was the coach, and they traveled, they barnstormed the Midwest, and they were roommates, and they just became the best of friends. And Mike wanted to start a minority scholarship foundation to provide opportunities for young people. And so he's built this organization, the McClendon Scholarship Foundation. We give $8,000, $10,000 scholarships every year. And we've really taken it to a new level. We've given over $1 million in scholarships already to worthy people. And these are graduate degrees, graduate scholarships, not undergraduate. These are people, young people, who we want to give back, to get your graduate degree, come back and work in intercollegiate athletics. We took a giant step last year. We hired a young man, a former recipient, a former intern, Adrian Haraway. He was associate AD in charge of academics at Virginia. He came back. He's now leading the McClendon charge. We're going through a total rebranding effort, and we're going to come out with some initiatives on McClendon. They're going to be bigger and better and really raise the bar. And the objective is very simple: to provide more opportunities for these young minority students so they can get their graduate degree and then come back and enhance the intercollegiate enterprise.
You referenced the NACDA Internship Program, which is really a very, very well-established program. Talk about that.
Yeah, we have over 200 young people in the food chain now in the industry. It's a phenomenal program. Of our 15 total employees, 8 are former interns. So we have this internship program. We go out every year with applications, and it's well known. And we get between 185 and 200 applicants every year. We whittle that down to 4. We provide these 4 young people we have housing. We give them a stipend so they can go on a professional development opportunity. But of most importance, these young people, usually they graduate in June, they come to us in August, and it's their first experience. They have to be to work at 8:30, leave at 5, and then they get to manage or help manage associations that they think they want to be part of. And it's a phenomenal, phenomenal opportunity, again, started by Mike, and Dana Leroy and Julie work in our office, really manage it. But it's a phenomenal program, and these 8 kids they were kids, now they're employees working for us. It's just a tremendous. They know the culture. They come in and they make a difference immediately, and it's one of the most preeminent internship programs in the country.
Who are a few people that have come through that pipeline?
Well, Pat Maddock, Tiffany Ma, who is now in charge of, she's in the championship department. Jason Galaska, Katie Newman, all on our staff, Dana Leroy, Adrian Haraway. There are individuals who are really making a name for themselves, and probably the shining star was last year when we had Lee Reed, the athletics director at Georgetown University, come up the food chain to eventually be our president. And that was just a phenomenal year and very, very gratifying.
Let's talk about the enterprise of intercollegiate athletics. Do you think the challenges today are different than they were 20 years ago?
No. I don't believe the challenges are different, but it's the microscope that all of us are under that makes the difference. It's the social media, it's the media itself, and I remember a long time ago when I was an NCAA corporate partner, I was sitting down with Dave Kaywood, who ran the internship program, who ran the NCAA corporate sponsorship program, and I said, gosh, Dave, how you do it? He said, Bob, you just know going in, when you work at the NCAA, you live in a glass house, and all rooms are glass, including the bathroom. And it's just the microscope. The microscope is just on everybody, and probably the other thing that's made the biggest difference, in my opinion, is the money. The money that is out there is just the models, it's tough to sustain what we're doing right now. But, again, we'll get through it, because you know what? We've got a lot of smart people in our business, you being one of them. And we're going to get through it, but you have to have challenges. Life's a series of challenges, and it's just overcoming the challenges. And while there are many, we'll figure it out, because at the end of the day, our job is to enhance the lives of student athletes, and we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
Does the growth of legalized sports gambling concern you?
It does, but the cows are out of the barn on that. So now we got to figure out how to manage it. The difficult thing is to figure out how we're going to pay for it, how we're going to educate. If you look at the educational element, again, getting back to what we do, where's all this extra money going to come to educate the student athletes, to educate the coaches, to educate the alumni? I mean, there's a whole myriad of educational components that needs to be configured here, and I think gambling was obvious, because it really was the last portal of huge revenue available. So the pro leagues have discovered that, but it's going to happen in college. It's happening as we speak, and we just have to figure out how to manage it. I don't know how, but again, we'll figure it out.
What I keep trying to figure out is, good thing or bad thing, there's been sports gambling for eons. It's just been in the corners.
Right.
And so if it's now in a publicly regulated entity, is that better, safer, more controlled, or does it bring more people and cause more problems? And I don't have a fix on that at this point.
Well, I tell you what, we're moving our convention to Las Vegas, and we've had the pleasure of dealing with the folks at MGM and the people at Las Vegas Events and the Visitor and Convention Bureau, and they're all for the education. They're all willing to jump in and help us do whatever they can to help us educate our constituents on gambling and how you survive in that environment, because obviously that's the world in which they live, and they firmly believe, because it is regulated, because they do such a good job and have spent inordinate amount of money in the regulatory elements of it, that they stand ready, willing, and able to assist us in whatever we need to help spread the gospel, if you will.
What differentiates intercollegiate sports from professional sports?
The passion, the people we have, as you know, working in our business. It's the passion of young people, and I don't know what the percentage is, John. Is it less than 1% of the student athletes are going to go on to a pro career? There's that saying that the people in college, the student athletes, play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey. Pro sports are, they're part of America's culture, as is college football. But, people will say, hey, did you watch that Browns game on Sunday? Or, hey, did you watch the Cavs? I said, no, I don't watch it on Sunday. I'm going to sit and watch it all day on Saturday. If I watched both days, I'd probably be divorced. But there's a huge difference, but it's all about the passion. It's all about if you look at, compare a front office of the Cleveland Browns versus the front office of Ohio State, if you will. There's an element there. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe there's a inner passion there that just you can't beat college athletics. And of course, I'm very biased, but college athletics is really where it's at.
Set Mike Cleary to the side for a moment. Who are some of the other people who've mentored you along the way?
That's a great question. When I started in business, I was 23 years old, so every step along the way up in corporate America, I was always the youngest guy around the table. So I had many mentors in corporate America. My parents, obviously, my father's still with us, my father-in-law is still with us, great mentors of mine. Probably one of the most recognizable who's still with us is Jim Host. Jim, I'm very, very close with Jim Host. but there's been a couple people in corporate America that have been close, and obviously Mike was he was the guy. And you look at mentors, but there's also people, and I'm sure in your position too, there's people who you incredibly respect. You sit around your table of commissioners, you sit around your table of folks at the NCAA, being on the committees you're on, and there's just folks that you just say, holy cow, that guy or that woman really gets it. So there's just so many people in our business that are just so inspiring to me. But at the top, my parents, my father-in-law, and obviously Mike was right there.
You have a favorite sport?
Favorite sport? I grew up playing baseball. I love baseball, but right now it's gravitated towards college football.
You have a favorite team?
They're all dues-paying members, John.
Good answer. You could be a conference commissioner.
One thing I'd like to add, if I could, I would like to commend you for the role you've played, not only in the MAC, but your leadership across the board in your career, and to rise to vice chair of Division I is a huge accomplishment. And people don't realize, for all these committees you've been on, and all of your peers around the country, but the ADs that are now taking a bigger stance on NCAA committees, it's not. You don't get extra money for that. It's time, and it's passion, and it's love, and it's your opportunity to give back. So I commend you and thank you for representing all of us as vice chair of the Management Council.
It's what we do.
Yes, it is.
You mentioned just a minute or two ago your father, and one of the things, as I was thinking about, we're going to get together and chat, one of the things we probably have in common is, I don't know if idolize is the right word, but our fathers are our guy.
Oh.
And we probably go to great lengths to take our fathers with us to events when we can and things like that. What's your father meant to you?
Oh, he's like yours. He's everything. I mean, he's he grew up blue collar guy, printer, but just a people person. He's just a spark in so many people's lives, and he's such a happy-go-lucky, just a regular guy, a guy everybody loves. Never is a bad word to say about anybody, and he's just one of those guys that you want to be with. And it's really a lot of fun, and I'm very blessed that he's still with us. And I hope when I'm his age, and he's 91 and a half, I hope my kids could say the same thing about me.
What brings you the most satisfaction in your job?
That is a great question, and it's very gratifying to work with the leadership of intercollegiate athletics, work with the leadership and create educational opportunities, create platforms that they can learn from, that we've created, that makes them a better administrator. We're doing some really interesting things now, focused strictly on the AD, because the AD is always trying to take care of the student athlete, the coaches, their servant leaders, but they never take care of themselves. So we're starting a great initiative now. We're going to work on giving them information on legal assistance. When you have a new contract, what do your peers have in their contracts? Take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself from a health perspective. And then financially, get yourself a financial planner. Set yourself up for the future. These jobs are tough today, and the tenure isn't what it used to be. And so we're trying to develop programs specifically for athletics directors so that we can help them not only do their job better, but also run their personal life better and take care of their families.
Seems like a good place to end. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for being with us on Conversations with the Commish.